What really happened with your host, Mike Rivero. The history the government hopes you never learn. Here is your host, Michael Rivero.
And aloha, America. Welcome to our show today. It is Thursday, April 6, 2017. Boy, there's all kinds of things going on today. It is just getting so ugly out there. We've got a lot of stuff to talk about today. Phone lines are open, 800-313-9443. Mike is in the control room, twiddling the dials, keeping us out of trouble, ready to answer the phone when you call on in. My web server is under massive attack, so somebody out there somewhere is trying to keep the truth from coming out about this rush to war with Syria. And Representative Thomas Massie came on out with a very famous quote from Senator Hiram Johnson years and years ago. The first casualty of war is the truth. And that's exactly what's going on today. We're being lied into another war, and they know nobody's buying the lie. So it's a rush job. We're going to do the lie, followed by the bombs immediately before anybody can stand up and say, wait a minute, you haven't really made your case. Remember Saddam's nukes. Remember the last two times they claimed Assad was gassing his own people. So they're just rushing it for it, and I cannot tell you how disgusted I am with Donald Trump that he's allowed himself to be corralled into this nonsense because it is going to end badly. And of course, Hillary would have been on board with the same thing either. So don't call in and say, aren't you sorry that you didn't vote for Hillary? No, I'm not. All righty. Trump apparently, while he was on his Air Force One down to Florida to meet with the Chinese president, basically said something should happen. What Assad did is terrible. Trump is fully on board. He's drunk the Kool-Aid is what he is. And this goes back to what I said before about him being way too dependent on the worldview presented by corporate media and propaganda, even though he knows the corporate media is lying about him. He's bought this image of Syria as the bad guy and North Korea is the bad guy. And I'm sorry, he's an idiot. So Trump has apparently informed Congress he's considering military action in Syria. Now, he's got it backward. Only Congress can declare war. And the propaganda is just so over the top. Now the U.S. State Department, Tillerson is out there saying that Russia and Iran bear the moral responsibility for the Syria chemical attacks. They've come out with this one big lie, and now what they're going to do is they're going to spread it everywhere. Oh, it wasn't just Syria, it's Russia and Iran, and they're surely going to try and figure out some way to get China in there as well. It is the big lie. That's what they're trying to do. Now, Russia is saying that there is no evidence that Damascus had anything to do with this chemical weapon attack. Remember, Russia brokered that deal where Syria surrendered all of their chemical weapons to the United Nations for destruction. The only people who have got chemical weapons in Syria are the rebels, and they were provided by the United States of America. So Russia is basically out there saying they're going to block any resolutions at the Security Council because they're all based on fake information. They're based on fake information. They're absolutely right. This is another big war-starting lie by the U.S. government, and Russia is warning that this could set the whole region at war and get us one step closer to that nuclear war that we all would like to avoid. So here's an interesting story that's come on out. Apparently only a couple of weeks before this chemical weapons attack, Damascus actually provided the Organization for the Prohibition of Chemical Weapons information on how these chemical weapons were being transported into Syria by the militant groups. They knew this stuff was being brought on in. Now, Russia at this point is saying they will continue to support Assad. They're not buying this. Russia is still taking the position that the chemical weapons were actually from a depot from the rebels. A rebel chemical weapons storage site was accidentally hit by a bomb, and that's what released the chemicals. Maybe. Or it might have been a false flag attack. Ron Paul's Liberty Report is out there saying, yeah, of course it's a false flag. There's zero chance that Assad did this. And again, the story doesn't make any sense. Look for what should be there and isn't. And what isn't there is a reason for Assad to do something like this. He's winning the war. He was getting U.S. support from the Trump administration. He doesn't have a reason to do this. The only group this benefits are the rebels and the U.S. war hawks. Another article coming out of Pravda. Assad sets himself up by using chemical weapons. Not. I love the way they phrase it. You know, Assad is committing death by Trump. Apparently Assad got really, really, really depressed. Even Scott Adams, remember the creator of Dilbert, is out there. He's the one who came up with the phrase. Assad, you know, who's been fighting for his life for several years and is only lately feeling safe and victorious, suddenly decides to commit suicide by Trump. Because the best way that can happen is to commit a war crime against your own people. This is a load of USDA choice bovine excrement. All right, we're going to do a moment here to do a shout-out to our on-air affiliates who are just now rejoining the network. And we're talking about this insane rush to a new war, a new invasion of Syria, based on this false flag gas attack. And this is the third time the U.S. has tried this. They really think you are all a bunch of idiots. After getting caught with a false flag chemical weapon attack in 2013, and then in 2014, they're back doing it again, because their attitude is, oh, they're just Americans. They have no memories whatsoever. They're a bunch of clueless dolts. As long as we wag Kim Kardashian at them, they'll forget about all the times we lied to them before, and they'll just go along with the story. And it isn't working. I was watching Fox News this morning, and even they were saying, this story doesn't make any sense. The Fox commentator was saying, why would he do something like this now? Forget the question about whether he would do it at all. Why now? He's winning the war. He's almost won this war. He's getting support from the U.S., a softening of policy. It doesn't make any sense. And there was a government spokesslug out there saying, well, Assad just decided it was time to test Donald Trump. No, you don't test somebody who is openly trying to become your friend. Israel is screaming that Assad has built a giant sarin factory under his bed or his bathroom or something like that, and that Assad felt he needed to test this stuff on the civilians. Really? Why not test them out on the rebels? If you're actually going to use chemical weapons, and there's another really giant hole in this story. If Assad was going to go ahead and use chemical weapons, why his own people? Why civilians? Why not against the rebels who have been trying to bring him down on behalf of the United States of America for going on 6 years? The story just does not make any sense if you stop and think about it. And that's why they're rushing to this new military action. They don't want to give you time to think about it. Because if you think about it, the whole thing just falls apart. And it isn't just the independent media. Because Nikki Haley was talking to an almost all-female New York audience, and she came out with this comment that the U.S. is calling out Russia because they just make things up without an ounce of proof, and the entire audience erupted into laughter. Nobody's buying this stuff, and laughter's a good response for it, if we're going to evade the bloodshed. Now, we are hearing, and here's another problem with the story. Why would Assad use a chemical weapon just before this Brussels conference on Syria? Why would he do that? Who's it? It's not going to help him in Brussels, is it? Well, according to the Russian envoy, apparently hardly anybody at the Brussels conference outside of the U.S. representatives is going along with this Assad gassed his own people. Nobody's buying the story. It is a lie, and everyone knows it's a lie. Putin is out there saying that this Idlib tragedy is only going to help the terrorists because they're going to use it to delegitimize Assad, who they have been trying to get rid of on behalf of the United States for going on 6 years. And maybe Trump went along with this because he didn't want a military defeat in his first year in office. Maybe he let his ego get the better of him. But they're talking about a decapitation strike. They're going to go right after Assad himself. And that's setting a dangerous, dangerous precedent. Now, as you know, Netanyahu was out there screaming that Assad has got massive, giant underground sarin factories, the same that they were saying about the hidden bunkers for Iraq's nuclear weapons and the rest of it. And Putin and Netanyahu had a phone call, and Putin said, this is groundless. Everything you're saying is groundless. You have zero proof of it. And Netanyahu was saying, well, if you're asking for proof, then you're a dirty, filthy anti-Semite, and you want Hitler to come back. He's frothing at the mouth and twitching on the floor and everything like that. Now, a lot of this goes back to the White Helmets, who supposedly are the authoritative source for this atrocity. But you need to remember, they have been caught before faking chemical attacks, putting makeup on people, putting them on the ground. And Justin Raimondo spotted something in one of the videos that was put out about this Idlib gas attack, when they're showing you all the poor children who were killed in this attack, and they're panning across their faces, and one of the kids opens her eyes to see if the camera's gone by or not. Obviously not really dead. The researchers over at MIT, who discredited the U.S. government's attempt to frame Assad for a gas attack in Ghouta in 2013, are back out there saying, these things are fake. These things are fake. They're lies. The White Helmets staged a phony death scene in the Syrian war zone just late last year, in November, showing sarin-saturated bodies. All right, let's take a couple of phone calls and clear the phone lines. Brendan in San Francisco, aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Mike, I'm wondering, are those SAG members that are staging all these, or do they have their union cards?
Oh, that's way too expensive. They're using non-union extras, I'm sure. Because all you got to give them is a box lunch.
Okay, so real quick, I just heard Paul Craig Roberts is saying that it looks like Trump has surrendered to the neocons, and what's enforcing that is Bannon's exit. It sounds like Bannon was pushing against this rush to war, and that was kind of his demise. And one last thing, I've got Michael Steele. He's kind of wrapping his brain around this and saying this whole thing this war is just a profit center, and he's adding to that it's human goods, not just oil, but body parts, orphans, and I know.
Hello? Did we lose you? I think we lost our connection.
We did.
All right, we're going to switch over to Dustin in New Jersey. Aloha, Dustin. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Yeah, hi, Mike. If you got that favorite bottle of liquor, you better drink up because the wheels are in motion, Mike. Nothing's going to stop this now. I cannot believe Trump. I cannot believe the turnaround this quick. Something has gone terribly wrong, Mike.
Yep.
I feel it in my stomach. I hope the Russian subs are on their way because I said this yesterday, Mike. The Russians are not going to back down like they did in Yugoslavia. They're not. Got the S-400s in Damascus. This is going to end badly, not just for over there. It's going to end badly for everywhere.
I want to put an idea out here, and this is based on a phone conversation I had earlier with somebody who's in a position to know. A major part of the driving force for all these wars in the Middle East is, of course, Israel. And what Donald Trump and the U.S. war hawks may not comprehend is that Israel does not necessarily want the United States to win. I have mentioned it many times before. If the U.S. and Russia get goaded into a mutual nuclear exchange and destroy each other, who comes out on top? Israel does, with their nuclear arsenal. They can then control the Middle East, and through the Middle East oil, they can pretty much control the entire world. And that's something that Trump and these war hawks, that's something that Trump and these war hawks need to pay attention to. The ones pushing them into this war may not want the United States to be victorious. They may want the United States ultimately to be destroyed by it.
I just cannot believe Donald Trump is not looking at this factually. I don't understand who has got his ear now.
Well,
I mean,
he's either being bribed, blackmailed, threatened, co-opted. I mean, we had that caller into the show the other day saying, they may have just sat him down in a room and said, if you don't go along with us, we'll kill you and your family, and we can get away with it. We got away with it in Dealey Plaza, Dallas, Texas. Got away with it at the Ambassador Hotel in Los Angeles.
Hey, Mike, I'm not a big fan of the Young Turks because it's really liberal. But even the one guy he says something doesn't smell right about this. Nothing smells right about any of this for the last, 100 years.
It is a crock, and it stinks to high heaven. And all of us need to start standing. Remember that wonderful scene from the movie Network where Howard Beale gets up and starts screaming, you guys are full of crap and we're not going to listen to you any longer. And that's what we all have to start saying to every politician, every prostitute, every correspondent. You guys are full of crap and I'm not going to listen to you anymore.
The whole thing that scares me, though, when you open that window and you yell out the window, there might be a mushroom cloud popping up over the horizon.
Well,
and if people think that's a joke, it ain't.
No, it isn't a joke here. Because if we get into World War III with Russia and China, obviously this island, this rock that we're on right now, is going to be involved to some extent. Or, worst case, the U.S. Right now is desperate for a big bang that will scare everybody, so we stop thinking about how this is all lies and fraud and deception. They could pop off a nuclear bomb here in Hawaii and say it came from North Korea.
Well, I hope everybody's safe though, Mike, because I just got a bad feeling about this, and it seems like it's our leaders and our destiny for them to kill us. It just seems like that,
Yeah, I mean, I've been seeing this rush to war for a very, very long time, and I understand the various agendas behind it. And at this point, absent an asteroid hitting Washington, D.C. and the Pentagon and Tel Aviv, it doesn't look like we're going to avoid this one. We're going to have another world war, and this one, we ended World War II with nuclear weapons. We're going to start World War III with nuclear weapons, and it's going to get completely out of control. Anyway, let's see. Dustin, we're going to let you go, and apparently Brendan got back on the line. Brendan, you got cut off. What were you saying?
I've got Paul Craig Roberts on InfoWars saying that Trump, it looks like he has surrendered, and I would agree. Also, speaking of suicide by Trump, Trump is committing political suicide. One last thing. Michael Steele is reminding us that this isn't just war for oil. There's profit centers in the human goods, the trafficking of minors, gold, guns, and I would add to his list art, antiquities. We saw what happened in Iraq. They raided the museums, and just to put an emphasis, it's just a profit center, this war that we're heading into.
Okay. Yeah, well, everybody tries to make a fast buck off of wars. Remember the so-called captains of industry at the end of World War II, and these were business executives who had volunteered their services to handle the replenishment effort for the war, and they were paid a symbolic salary of something like $1 a week. But at the end of the war, they basically grabbed all the material that they had accumulated, destroyed all the records of it, and started new businesses selling all this surplus stuff, and it was big business and big money. But like I said, wars are never started for just one reason. But when you get a group of people whose own personal agendas all meet at the same solution, you get the war. For the Federal Reserve, it's returning the world to Bretton Woods. For Israel, it's smashing up the Middle East into easily maneuverable countries, all kinds of other motives out there. We shouldn't just think it's just one cause. It never is. We'll be right back. And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show. We're going to take 2 more phone calls, then we're going to close the phone lines because I got to get back to this news here. Scott in Virginia, aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Mike, we might be getting very close to that instantaneous uprising in this country. If Trump goes into Syria, I'm telling you, there's going to be protests in this country like we have never seen before.
I think you're right. Please keep it peaceful because we don't want to give the government an excuse to declare martial law. But I'll tell you this, at this point, Trump just made himself a one-term president. When he goes into Syria, that will be the end of any possibility of his being reelected in 2020.
Well, if he goes into Syria, I'll support impeachment, and I'm sure his enemies will be overjoyed to hear that. A bunch of his former voters supporting his impeachment, because I can tell you right now, this Syria thing is the Rubicon for me. It's which lost support for Obama when he tried to get us into Syria. And I'm going to tell you, I'm going to say one thing about the Syrian thing. If we couldn't make a success of Afghanistan, where we had a run of the country and its drug leader president was our puppet, if we couldn't have a success in Iraq when we owned that place for years, and we couldn't make a success of Libya, how are we going to go into a country that has Russian military planes flying around, as well as Syrian jets, as well as Turkish jets, as well as Al-Qaeda? How are we going to go in there and remove a president without starting World War III? I mean, it's just ridiculous. On the face of it, it's just ridiculous.
Well, it is a very valid question to be asking here right now, but as far as Afghanistan and Iraq and Libya are concerned, you have to stop thinking in terms of national borders and realize that what the U.S. has conquered and occupied are the resource-rich areas. Now, up in Afghanistan, the puppet regime there is only in control of about 60% of the country right now. But the 60% they're in control of, courtesy of U.S. bayonets, is where the opium poppies are growing and the oil pipeline right-of-way lies. And they don't care about the rest.
It does seem as our foreign policy is being conducted by people that do not have our interest at stake.
No, it isn't. It isn't. They're serving multinational corporations. They're serving Israel. And again, the people who are pushing this war forward appear to be completely unconcerned over the fact that we could actually lose this one.
And once we lose it, we are going to be a lot like Germany in the 1940s, because the crimes of the federal government have been horrendous, and no one's going to believe that we were ignorant about it. My last point is to your callers: if you guys can call your congressman, the Speaker of the House, and even the White House, and tell them how you feel about this possible Syrian action. It worked for us 3 years ago when we stopped Obama dead in his tracks, because everybody called their congressman and called the White House, and the overwhelming amounts of protest about Obama trying to get us into Syria, it caused him to back down.
Well, if there was ever a time that everybody needs to get on the phone, fax machine, however you're going to communicate with the media and with politicians, now's the time for every single American to stand up and just scream that this nonsense must stop. We know they're lying about this sarin gas attack, and we do not want any more wars of conquest. We're tired of living in a wartime economy and watching our nation corrode and rot in front of us and seeing our kids coming back in wheelchairs or cheap metal caskets.
I agree. And on the point of the gas attack, it does not matter who's responsible. We cannot go into a Middle Eastern country that has Russian military jets flying around, Russian missiles bases, and then with Turkey in there as well. We cannot go in there. We can't. It's just a recipe for World War III. I don't care who was responsible for that gas attack. We can't do it. We don't have the money to do it. We're broke, too stretched out. It's like sending Barney Fife to war. It might be a noble battle, but we don't have the capacity to fight it.
No, we don't.
There are too many actors in that country right now.
Plus, the U.S. is looking at a two-front war over in North Korea, and that's going to stretch us even further. All right, well, listen, we got to take a break for commercials. Thank you for the phone call, Scott. We're going to be back with one more phone call. Then we're going to close the phone lines for a while because I got to get on back to this news. We'll be right back. And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show. We're going to take one more phone call, then close the lines for a while. Wes in Idaho, aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Boy, thank you, Michael, for taking my call. I don't want to see U.S. go into war with Syria. Put that out first. But I want to suggest, we're talking about a masterful negotiator, maybe a Moses, maybe a George Washington. I hope. Is he possibly using your playbook, part of your playbook, that is to dramatize, to draw out the real tyrant? I mean, it's like he's maybe walking a tightrope right now, wondering or having us get on the edge of our seats, getting emotional about the whole thing to draw them out. I mean, that's a possibility.
I've gotten that. I've gotten that in a couple of emails. I'm not inclined to go along with that because politics is perception, and the perception is the president is supposed to be running the country, and if Trump has allowed himself to be steamrollered by the neocons, then he's showing himself to be a weak leader, and that is going to haunt him for the next. For the remainder of his term. And with the invasion of Syria, he's not going to have a second term in office. He's going to be a one-term president at this point.
I agree. Bira Bizan, the homeland for the Jews in about 1930 in the USSR. Do you ever speak about that?
Yeah. We've mentioned it in the past, not recently, but we have mentioned it.
Okay. I guess I missed it. Again, thank you for taking my call.
All right, thanks an awful lot, Wes. We're going to let you go. We're going to close the phone lines for a while here and get on back to this absolute fantasy, false flag, leading us into a war that is going to be a disaster for the United States of America. And I made a point of posting all these flashback stories to the front page of whatreallyhappened.com. Syrian Kurds accuse Turkey of aiding sarin gas delivery to Daesh. Sarin materials brought in via Turkey and mixed in Syrian ISIS camps. This was a Turkish member of their parliament to Russia Today. And remember all the bombings of hospitals were out there. Oh, the poor children, the innocent civilians. Look at all the times that these Doctors Without Borders hospitals were being bombed by the U.S. up in Kunduz. And they were bombed, and the Kunduz was bombed for an entire hour by NATO. And their excuse was, oh, we thought there were some militants around it. And the hospital was sitting in the middle of an empty field. And they have the GPS coordinates of it. Another flashback story we had. Seymour Hersh says Hillary approved sending Libya's sarin gas to the Syrian rebels. The evidence trail is pointing everywhere but Bashar al-Assad. Now, one story that we have is that a rebel chemical weapons facility was accidentally bombed during the conflict. There is another theory, and this is coming on out from 12160.info, saying the White Helmets, which have this Al-Qaeda affiliated group, and they're funded by George Soros, and they have a past history of fabricating war crimes, propaganda. And so this story is saying that the White Helmets are actually behind the chemical attack. And one of the other flashbacks we put up there that you should look at, it is a listing of 42 false flag attacks that have been officially admitted to. It's not a list of all the false flags in history. These are the 42 where governments have come back and said, yeah, we did this. It was so much fun. We really fooled you, didn't we? 42. Now, as you know, the initial reports from the site of the gas attack were saying there were no airplanes. Nobody was dropping bombs. And now they're trying to push back at that. NBC has now all of a sudden, this long after the event, said, oh, the U.S. military in the area were tracking the planes and bombs on radar. And we absolutely know that the bombs came from the airplane and we could hear the explosions and the flashes on the ground. And those had to be the chemical weapons. Really? All the radar saw were planes and bombs on skin paint mode. Radar cannot get a bounce off of chemicals. It's just more USDA choice bovine excrement, courtesy of the prostitutes and the correspondents over at NBC. And, of course, Israel can't resist taking advantage of this. Israel's former chief rabbi says there's a Holocaust happening in Syria. How dare they violate our trademark? We must invade immediately. And by the way, there's a lot of stories coming out today. Holocaust this, Holocaust that, Holocaust music, blah, blah, blah. Makes me wonder what Israel's getting ready to do, because every time they crank up the H word, it signals something really, really nasty is about to happen. Now, here is where we are all sharing our concern. This is coming out of shtfplan.com. Donald Trump may be getting us into a military situation that we cannot win. We're already mired in Iraq, Afghanistan, Libya, Yemen, getting tangled up in Syria, a couple of other places I can't even remember anymore. And now they're talking about a full-on invasion of Syria and a full-on invasion of North Korea. It's too much. This nation has been at war ever since 2001 actually. Went into Afghanistan immediately after 9/11. 16 years of war. The machinery is all worn out. The stockpiles are drawn down. Our military rank and file understand these are not moral laws. They're not legal laws. They're simply wars of conquest. And so do the American people. Remember what I said about Sun Tzu and the art of war. And he goes through all the things that a ruler must have to prevail in war. One of which is a military that believes in the moral rightness of the war, so that they will fight fiercely and if necessary die in that war. And you must have a civilian population that believes in the moral rightness of the war so that they will bear the burdens war brings even to the victorious side. The U.S. government has neither one of those. And my concern is that President Trump and the war hawks may not comprehend that the driving force behind this rush to all these wars may not have it in mind that the U.S. is going to win. And they don't care. Remember, when bankers crank up wars, they love war. War enslaves countries to debt. They don't care which side wins or loses. They make money off of both sides. Now let's get on back to some of these other scandals that are floating around here. And this one is the Obamagate. Susan Rice, the unmasking. Because apparently some of those members of the House Intelligence Committee who have seen the actual documents are saying they're not about Moscow. There's nothing related to Moscow. And these reports were very detailed about everyday lives. And Representative Peter King was saying it's sort of like where you have a divorce case where lawyers hire investigators just to find out what the other person is doing from morning till night. And then you look through there for something you can use on them. And that's exactly what they were. This was spying for political gain. Now, the other side is pushing back as hard as they can. And the chairman of the House Intelligence Committee, Devin Nunes, is now saying he's going to step aside from being in charge of that Russia probe because he's been hit with ethics accusations by several left-wing activist groups. And he says he's going to take the time away to just deal with it. He says he hasn't done anything wrong. This is clearly political, and yes, he's right. The timing is just too cute. But he's going to deal with that, and meanwhile, he's going to be leaving the chairmanship of that investigation to Mike Conway of Texas. And, of course, now Conway will come under attack because the plan here is to reshape the House Intelligence Committee into something that will ignore the facts and go along with the preferred outcome of Russia hacked the election. But even Democratic Representative Adam Schiff is saying there's nothing there. There's nothing definitive on the Trump-Russia collusion. And remember, the entire case for Russia hacking the election or hacking the DNC came from that company, CrowdStrike. And now they've pulled back from the story. They've discredited their own story, and they're refusing to cooperate with the Intelligence Committee investigation. They're just stonewalling. Now, the other day we were talking about how the spying extended way beyond Donald Trump and his family and his staff, including Michael Flynn, Sean Hannity, Eric Prince, and now we're finding out that the orders to surveil Sean Hannity and Eric Prince and others came from CIA Director John Brennan. And Got News is basically saying Brennan was targeting all Trump supporters for surveillance. Now, what's that got to do with crime or terrorism? It's clearly political. Clearly political. Now then, getting on back to that CrowdStrike report. In that report, which has now been discredited, they identified several servers in Russia that they said the hacking came from. And of course, hackers never use their own computers. They break into somebody else's computer, they compromise it, and they launch their attacks from that one in order to conceal their true origin. And we know the CIA has this special program set up to frame third parties for the CIA's hacking efforts. Now, here's where it gets interesting, because the guy who owns the company where these servers identified in the CrowdStrike report is out there saying he has never been contacted by anybody in U.S. law enforcement or intelligence agencies. And he's saying clearly they're not really interested in the truth because he's ready to cooperate. He's got all the records from those servers waiting where they can look and see where these actual hacking attacks originated or came from the next machine in the chain. Nobody's interested. Could care less, because we live in a post-truth world, and facts and truth don't matter anymore, only what we can make you believe. Story coming out of Investment Watch blog, basically saying that the indications are now that this Trump and Russia story was actually cooked up last summer, months before the November election. It was put on a back burner as kind of a just in case, a plan B. And the Obama team really didn't think they were going to have to use it because they all believed Hillary was going to win. And then as soon as Trump overcame the election fraud, they pulled it out and said, Russia, Trump, Trump, Russia, Russia, Trump. No evidence whatsoever. Now, there's another big stink going on here over the fact that Hillary Clinton and several of her staffers retained their security clearances after they left the Department of State. Normally, when you step down from a government position, you have to surrender all of your documents, and your clearance is rescinded. It can be reinstated if you get another job. But that's the way it normally works. But apparently, Obama allowed Hillary and her staff to maintain the clearances and access to highly classified information, even while she was running for president. Now, the story coming out of Hillary and Obama is that Hillary is getting ready to write a book about her time at the State Department, and she and all of her staffers are basically being considered researchers to help her research the book. And that's their official story. And where that breaks down is Hillary can't use any of that classified information in writing her book. It's nonsense. So the question here now is not just whether Hillary Clinton, while Secretary of State, was selling U.S. classified information to foreign sources and using her charitable foundation to collect and launder the money, but did she continue to do so after she left the Department of State with the collusion and connivance of former President Obama? By the way, have you noticed Obama has sort of vanished, gone away somewhere in the South Pacific to work on his book, far away from Washington, D.C., while all this stuff is going down here? Okay, now then, Ben Carson has just uncovered a $500 billion with a B, $500 billion in financial mismanagement at the U.S. Housing and Urban Development Department under Julian Castro and various other Obama appointees. Was it just mistake? Story coming out of Investment Watch blog is asking, was this $500 billion gap in HUD funding actually a slush fund for the anti-Trump war chest? because that's a lot of money, and we're starting to find out a lot of money has left the U.S. government, not just through the Pentagon, but through the White House, through the State Department. It's opened up that whole investigation into whether George Soros was actually getting taxpayer dollars to support leftist causes in all these other countries. Now, over in Russia, in St. Petersburg, they've arrested another 8 people in connection with the terrorist attack on the metro. This is in addition to the 6 already arrested, total of 14. And apparently when they raided this domicile with these 8 people, they found more of these improvised explosive devices. So this was a major operation of some kind. And I hope Russia is able to find out just who was behind it. Now, getting more to the domestic politics, the Democrats have tried to filibuster the confirmation vote for Neil Gorsuch. The Senate has now approved the nuclear option, and everybody's screaming it's going to reshape the Senate and the Supreme Court. It should not be allowed to happen. But apparently they're going forward, and they're expecting that Neil Gorsuch will be confirmed tomorrow. Over in eastern Ukraine, Zaharchenko has called for a mobilization to defend themselves against Kiev. 27,000 people came forward. So that is getting very, very serious. And you need to remember, this part of the Donetsk region was one of the bloodiest battles in the Second World War. So that is getting out of control here. Okay, we're coming up on another commercial break. When we come on back, more about North Korea and all this other insanity. There's never a good asteroid around when you need one. We'll be right back.
What really happened with your host, Mike Rivero. The history the government hopes you never.
And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show here. Let's talk about North Korea. Here a war, there a war, everywhere a war, E-I-E-I-O. Now, apparently, Donald Trump's first choice for Secretary of Defense, Jack Keane, is now saying that North Korea's nuclear missile program may require the U.S. to use what he called the only option left, a large-scale military strike. I wouldn't worry. Analysts looking at the last North Korean missile test have determined it was a complete failure. The missile went out of control and pinwheeled across the sky and plunked down. It got nowhere near Japan. And again, North Korea, and for that matter, any country using a nuclear weapon, is not going to carry out an unprovoked first strike against anybody else because it would be national suicide. Nations invest in nuclear weapons to deter invasion. That's why the United States wants other countries to give up their nuclear weapons to make it easier to invade them. Or chemical weapons, or any weapon of mass destruction that exists as a deterrent to invasion. You have to get rid of all your weapons and just let us march into your country, because that's according to the rules we just made up. North Korea is not going to launch a nuclear missile at anybody unless they are attacked first. In all of human history, only one country has ever used nuclear weapons of mass destruction against the civilians of another country, and that is, of course, the United States. Nobody else has done it. Not once. As if things weren't bad enough for the rest of the world, apparently the Dalai Lama is visiting a town of Tawang, which is right on the border with China and India, and that's inflaming tensions there. It's amazing. And even worse, Philippine President Rodrigo Duterte has ordered Filipino troops to start deploying on the unoccupied South China Sea islands and reefs claimed by Manila and also by China. So it's just cranking up all over. We're in a world war. All that's missing is the really big bang where everybody wakes up and says, oh yes, it's a world war. Start writing the songs and the movies. Now then, you remember that story came out about all these phone calls to Jewish centers, we're going to bomb you, and everyone was screaming, oh, anti-Semitism, Jew hate on the rise. And it turned out to be a Jewish teenager who had done it all. He was arrested in Israel. And his parents came on out and said, oh, well, he's autistic, he's got a brain tumor, doesn't know what he's doing. Well, apparently investigators have discovered that this kid had a Bitcoin account worth millions of shekels. Now, I don't know what the current exchange rate is for dollars, but that's a lot of money. And Israeli authorities are saying that this kid was being paid by a third party to make these phone calls, as well as selling forged IDs on the dark net. Sounds to me like this kid knew exactly what he was doing. We'll be right back after station identification. Aloha, America. Welcome back to our show here, hour number 2. And earlier we were talking about some of these claims being put out about Syria don't stand up to examination. The one about, how American forces saw the chemical weapons attack on the radar. They saw the planes and they saw the bombs. And radar doesn't get a return off chemicals. So that story is already discredited. So they're already out there with another one. They've deployed the Bex howitzer to fling the poo at us just as hard as they can. Next, they're going to have the Bex stealth bomber over our heads just trying to bury us in the stuff. And now Israel is claiming that one of their intelligence units, you know, the by way of deception, thou shalt do war people, those guys, overheard Syrian officials talking about the chemical attack on the radio. Really, I can just imagine somebody getting ready to commit a war crime that's going to result in an attack on one's own country, getting on the radio and say, yeah, we're going to go ahead and drop a banned illegal chemical substance on our civilians here, and I don't care who hears me broadcasting about it. But that's the latest claim coming out of Israel, and if you refuse to believe it, then you must be a dirty, filthy, Jew-hating anti-Semite who wants Hitler to come back and gas the Jewish babies in the ovens. Twice. Now, I've been talking about the very real possibility that getting into a war with Russia is going to be a bad thing. And I've been talking about how Russia's latest generation of nuclear reentry vehicles, the MIRV warheads, are themselves maneuverable. Now, the entire U.S. ballistic missile defense system, going all the way back to Reagan's Star Wars, operated on the presumption that once the MIRV warhead was released from its bus, that's the upper stage of a nuclear missile that actually aims the individual warheads at targets and then releases them, the warheads would follow a predictable ballistic path to target. Well, that's not valid anymore, because the latest generation of Russian reentry vehicles are maneuverable. They don't follow a predictable ballistic path. They swerve, they dipsy-doodle, they go up and down, they throw corkscrews in the sky. And presumably China has shared that technology as well. And by way of confirmation, the head of the U.S. Strategic Command is now saying that the U.S. military has no defense against Russian nuclear missiles. Very good reason not to get into a war with them. Another story coming on out here. This is from Microsoft Network, amazingly enough. Is the F-35 a $1 trillion mistake? And they're talking about the fact that when it comes to military procurement and politics, a project can reach a point where the sheer weight of its economic impact and political heft make it impossible to kill. And that seems to be the case here. There are 3 versions of the F-35, requiring a total of some 300,000 parts. And Lockheed is parceling out the subcontracting to all but 5 states: Alaska, Hawaii, Louisiana, North Dakota, and Wyoming. I understand we don't really have an aviation industry per se here in Hawaii. I mean, obviously we have airports and aircraft maintenance and the military, but we don't actually have factories that make these kind of things. But it's a huge boondoggle. It's very expensive, and there is a strategic weakness right there, because all of our latest weapons are hideously expensive and not all that effective. When we get into a real shooting war and these things get shot up, they have to be repaired or replaced. And because they are very expensive to build, they're very expensive to repair and replace. And in every war in history, the side that runs out of money first loses. Now, the other day we were talking about how the Navy's T-45 training jets were having a bit of a problem, where apparently a lot of the instructors who use these to train naval aviators were refusing to fly in them because of safety concerns, problems with the oxygen systems. Must be the same one they use in the F-22. Well, the U.S. Navy apparently decided, with all of these instructors literally on the verge of mutiny, that they had to take a look at the situation, and now the Navy has grounded, temporarily, the T-45 Goshawk training jet while they look into the situation and see what's going on. And probably in this current climate, they'll come back and say it was just in the imaginations of the instructors, get back in the plane and fly. But they're going through the moves. All right, let's grab 2 more phone calls. Francis in Vancouver, aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hi, Mike.
Hi.
Can you hear me?
I hear you.
Okay. I wanted to talk about a really good article that appeared on Henry Macau about 3 weeks ago, and it concerns the Canada-EU trade deal. And that's all nice, you know, we're going to trade with the EU and settle a lot of little disputes, and we'll make lots of money. Only there's a problem with it. Hidden away in the core of it is this totally incongruous clause. And it's tied to the fact that the Bank of Canada was created in the 1930s in the depths of the Great Depression so that the government, which is a sovereign nation of Canada, can lend itself, just print money for great capital works and build bridges and dams or nuclear reactors and do it pretty much interest-free. And this is how, like, say, for example, British Columbia and Quebec and Alberta financed big hydroelectric projects that were the envy of the world and that have enriched us to this day. Now, in 1974, Pierre Trudeau, Prime Minister Pierre Trudeau, discontinued that. And the Bank of Canada, though, still exists, and it still has that legal ability, but we were not using that ability, and the result is that we've had to pay $1.8 trillion in extra interest on debt because we haven't used that ability since 1974. There's actually a big court case about that.
The Como lawsuit.
In this CETA, I want to just read to you this, if it's not too boring. Up until now, the Bank of Canada has always had the power to make those low-interest loans to the Government of Canada, but has never used it. Politicians have always maintained that to do so would be inflationary. That, of course, has never been true. There's absolutely no evidence of that at all. Now, to the present day, Finance Minister Morneau and Prime Minister Justin Trudeau, for some inexplicable reason, have included a clause in the CETA agreement that would forever eliminate the ability of the Bank of Canada to create low-interest loans for the governments of Canada. One could be forgiven for asking why a clause on a banking and money creation would be included in a trade agreement, not to mention a clause that will have a catastrophic impact on Canada and Canadians. I would suggest to you that such a decision could not come at a worse time when the world finds itself in an increasingly perilous financial situation.
I would agree with you.
So that just shows...
And we did make a big thing about it when the Comer lawsuit was out there, and the Canadian government literally banned the Canadian media from even reporting on that lawsuit. It's basically, it's a giveaway to the banks who are now loaning the money for these projects at interest. That's even more inflationary than having the central bank create the money and loan it to the government interest-free.
Yeah. Well, it's a big present to the Rothschilds and the bankers of the City of London.
Yes.
And I guess, just everything, like I had a lot of hope here with Trump, getting in and Brexit. It looks like everything's just turning against us now. And these globalists are coming back with a redoubled fury just to crush everybody.
Yeah, that's what it looks like. They've hit the panic button and they're trying to slam the door shut on our slave cage as fast as they can. Anyway, Francis, we're going to let you go.
Thank you.
We're going to do a quick shout-out to our on-air affiliates who are just rejoining the network. We're just on the verge of getting into the economic news here, but we've got 2 more phone calls, then we're going to close the lines again. Peter in Los Angeles, aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Yeah, hi, Mike. I just wanted to bring up a couple of things. The first one is just an incidental point, and that is about 3 or 4 weeks ago. It was announced that the major components of the 75th Rangers were being deployed to Syria for humanitarian missions.
Yeah.
Now, I'm here to tell you, as an ex-Ranger, that doesn't happen ever.
No.
Ever. So this has been in the works for months because the deployment probably took them a month to plan. But that's the first thing. The second thing is, our Middle Eastern policy has not been ours for 60 years.
Yes.
I mean, look at the people who are running it. The banks are running it. It's the Israeli lobby. It's the same people. There's a confluence of things from George Soros to the banks to the guy who just got off the phone about the Canadians and not being able to print their own money. All this stuff, and who gets all the money? Soros is getting the money, the Israelis are getting the money, the bankers are getting the money, the media is trumpeting all this stuff. Who are they? It all comes down to the same people who've been running our Middle Eastern policy, and by default, the entire foreign policy, because it drives everything else, for the last 50 years, and look where we're at. We have not followed our own national interests in 50 years.
Yeah, I agree with you. Absolutely agree with you. And as I said in the first hour of the show, the thing that concerns me and should be concerning Trump and should be concerning the American war hawks is that the drivers of this new rush to war may be totally unconcerned over the possibility that the U.S. could probably lose this. Because especially coming from the point of view of the bankers, they love wars. They loan to both sides. They don't care which side wins or loses. They make money off of both sides. And as far as Israel is concerned, if the U.S. and Russia can be goaded into a mutually destructive nuclear war, who comes out on top? Israel, with its nuclear arsenal, would be in control of all the Middle East oil, and through that oil, basically in control of the whole world. And so the people who are pushing the United States into this war aren't intending for it to win.
Mike, let's take it since 1990. Since 1990, we've been at war with Iraq twice. We've destroyed Iraq. We're now partitioning in it. And by the way, the Israelis when I was there, were crawling all over Mosul. There were all sorts of Israelis all over the northern. We've been looking to.
They were buying it all up on pennies on the dollar.
Right. We've trashed Libya. We've trashed Yemen. We've trashed Syria. They want us to trash Iran. What have we won in any of this? We have not won anything.
The hatred and disdain of the rest of the world. That's what we've gotten for all of this.
And they've got a fragmented Middle East that they can expand into.
Yep.
They've won every single one of those. We've lost every single one. We've lost our money, we've lost our men, we've lost our equipment, we've lost the goodwill of the world and the trust of the world, but they've won every time. They're the only winners.
I agree.
And it all comes down to them.
I agree. I agree.
Anyways.
And as I said, well, no, I understand. And as I said, Israel's long-term interests may prefer a world in which the U.S. and Russia have destroyed each other. And that is something I wish
about us.
Yeah, no, they don't. And I think the people in Washington, D.C., who see themselves as friends of Israel over at AIPAC need to understand that, Israel demands a lot of support and loyalty, but they never give it back. It's always a one-way street. And Israel may see its own fortunes improve with a destroyed United States of America.
Your old description of sucking the parasite sucking the host into a hollow husk, that's exactly what they're doing.
Yep. Okay?
So, all right, thanks, Mike.
All right, thanks. We're going to take one more phone call from Mike in Kentucky. Mike, what's on your mind?
I missed what you said there when they clicked me over. It cut you off.
I just asked what was on your mind.
Oh, well, two things. Yesterday I clicked on your computer internet security section. I took a screenshot of it. I've never seen a page like that where it says there was no content, content not available or something like that. And so I went through and got the URL number that I have saved in my favorites for that page, and it worked just fine. But
well, we're under heavy attack right now,
that's what I was going to suggest is that a lot of what you say is true, and I think the technocratic state is probably in a bit of a panic mode, and they don't have unlimited resources, so we need to just keep at it. I don't think they have the ability to take care of everybody. They certainly don't have enough prison cells for everybody. So
yep.
The issue that you're talking about with Israel, though, what reminded me of is near the end of Hunt for Red October in the movie. I don't know if it's in the book, but the Russian commander, like lieutenant, he took all the safety measures off of the torpedo, and it came back at him. And right before they're about to blow up, the guy goes, "You idiot! You've killed us."
Yes.
I think Israel needs to realize that, because one of the things that Fukushima brought out is that Nantucket has one of those reactors of the same design that was at Fukushima, but they keep extending the permits for the fuel pools to more and more rods to be packed into these pools.
It's not just the fuel ponds. They're extending the permits for these reactors to operate, and reactors are built for a finite lifespan, because under the neutron bombardment, the metal in the containment vessel starts to break down. And because the reactors are very expensive to replace, that's all across the country. Where
Russians can do whatever they want with their reentry vehicles spiraling this way or that, or dipsy doodles. There's so much fuel sitting around here. It's down to 90, as I understand it. They've decommissioned a bunch of them, but it's still down to 90 just in the several states in the main part of America, the mainland. But then there's a few in Canada. There's a bunch in Europe. But in an extended period of chaos, what happens if power goes out and the guys that are manning the pumps and feeding the diesel fuel to the generators, they got to eat. They got to be taken care of. If there's an extended period of chaos, at some point they're probably going to throw up their hands and head south to the southern hemisphere. We're talking, in a limited nuclear exchange, I think the northern hemisphere is toast. What's her name? Kathleen Caldecott was talking that if there was going to be another major earthquake in Japan, she's getting all her family out of Boston.
I heard that one. Well, I noticed that the cable channel one of the cable channels that deals with the older movies has all of a sudden started rerunning On the Beach, which, if you have not seen that, it's a very, very powerful anti-nuclear war statement. Anyway, Mike, we're going to let you go.
All right, thanks.
All right, we're going to close the phone lines. Get on back to the news here. We're talking about the economy. Obviously, the phone call from the Canadian trade deal with the EU, permanently committing the Canadian people to pay interest on money borrowed from private banks rather than avail themselves of the Canadian Central Bank, which is supposed to provide interest-free loans for infrastructure development. Got to make everybody a debt slave. That's what the New World Order wants, is all of the human race as a permanent debt slave to the bankers. It's the return of feudalism or serfdom. That's what they're literally trying to bring us back to. Well, apparently, after Tillerson warned Russia that the U.S. is going to remove Assad, the stock market took a little bit of a stumble, which I think puts the lie to this idea that wars are always good for the economy, because apparently the stock market certainly doesn't feel that way right now. Over in Spain, their finance minister is claiming that their most Italian bank is still solvent, that the problems that are happening in Italy are not going to spread to Spain. I seriously doubt that's accurate, but it sounds to me like they're already getting ready to try and crank the propaganda out that, oh, it's not all that bad and we're going to get through. Just do what the government tells you and, stay loyal to the bankers and everything will be just fine. Apparently, Bitcoin is a huge, huge success in Japan. There's predicting that by this summer, there'll be 260,000 stores where Bitcoin is accepted. Now, here in the U.S., they're trying to crack down on virtual currencies. There's one that somebody was trying to introduce me to out here, and they just got declared illegal by Hawaii. You will use Federal Reserve notes. You will be a slave to the private central banks. That's what life in America is right now. To nobody's surprise, the Barclays traders who were involved in that LIBOR manipulation have been acquitted. And, of course, the bankers never eat their own. So we knew that was going to be the outcome. We're going to take a break for commercials, and we will be right back. Aloha, America. Welcome back to the show here. And we're talking about the economic news here. Somebody just sent me this story saying that we may be able to explain Donald Trump's reversal on his war policy when we remember that George Soros backed Jared Kushner's venture cadre with $250 million. So maybe Trump can't be bought, but apparently his family can be. Alrighty, now over in Iraq is signaling that they're going to basically go rogue on OPEC's cap on oil production, and they're going to increase their domestic oil production by 600,000 barrels by the end of the year. And that's going to drive oil and gas prices down until the war really cranks up, because war takes a lot of oil and gas. Very alarming story over at Blacklisted News, and yeah, this is true for a lot of people I know. 50% of Americans are literally living payday to payday. 1/3 of Americans could not write a $500 emergency check. Something comes up, big break on the car, medical emergency. They just don't have it. They just don't have it. We are being driven down into abject poverty. At the same time, they're whining and crying that they're not buying stuff at our shopping malls. What's wrong with those people? We'll give them credit cards. People don't want credit cards. They want to be debt-free because they're beginning to realize debt is a form of enslavement. We are all crying freedom. Apparently, another retailer, Rue 21, has missed their interest payments on their loan. They can't even pay the principal. They've just been making payments on the interest. They missed that. And they may be going into bankruptcy. Now, here's a story that came out of Breitbart. The Internal Revenue Service has apparently been seizing millions of dollars from innocent individuals and businesses because it was easier than going after terrorists and drug dealers. This is from the Treasury Department's own internal watchdog. And they're saying the IRS misused a law that was intended to crack down on organized crime and terrorism, and instead simply went after innocent people and plundered their money because it was easier. Sort of the federal version of civil forfeiture. Now, let's talk about Europe, immigration. The globalists are uniting around Macron. Emmanuel Macron, who is running against Marine Le Pen. They're all pushing him because he's a globalist and he's tied in with the Rothschilds, and they're really pushing him the way they were pushing Hillary Clinton in this last election. The French voters, though, are not really going along with it because apparently both Macron and Fillon are being denounced as liars for carrying on dishonest campaigns. And French voters are just completely turned off by them. Now, over in Brussels, they're still making noises about how Britons are going to regret leaving the EU, and they're going to change their mind, and they're going to be begging to return to the dictatorship of Brussels and the slavery of the European Central Bank. And Duncan Smith said, no, actually looking at the economic forecasts, you're going to want to be joining us somewhere down the road here. Now, members of the European Parliament are basically going public, blasting the EU's migrant and refugee policy, saying it is disastrous, it is hypocritical, it is causing all kinds of hardship all across Europe. And, of course, Brussels is still on board with this idea of we're going to blur all the people together. Hungary and Poland are refusing to take any more migrants. Brussels is saying, well, if you won't take your migrants, you can get out of the bloc. That might backfire on them. Poland and Hungary are already talking about leaving the European Union. So, good news is, illegal border crossings from Mexico into the U.S. are at a 17-year low. We'll be right back. Aloha, America. Welcome back to the show here. Now, as you know, following Trump's election victory, a lot of liberals decided they were going to throw tantrums, grandstand, all this kind of nonsense, and it turned off a lot of people. And it's actually brought a considerable amount of economic harm to these individuals who blurred the line between their political views and their place of business. And one of the hardest hit has been Starbucks, which is sort of a liberal icon, if you will, getting together and talking. But people have stopped going in there, and now Starbucks is conceding that this was a wrong thing for them to do, to bash on Trump, and they're trying to lure conservatives to come back and buy their coffee there. Personally, I don't plan to ever go into a Starbucks ever again. But the worst hit is Shia LaBeouf. He's an actor. You've seen him in Transformers, Kingdom of the Crystal Skull. And apparently he has a new movie out, Man Down. And it just ran for a week in Great Britain, only in one theater. It's kind of a pre-screening, and they sold a grand total of 3 tickets. $26. That's the box office. So we can either call this the Shia LaBeouf effect or the Starbucks effect. Mixing politics with business is never a good idea. And apparently Shia's anti-Trump tantrums have tarnished his star, or more to the point, harmed his so-called bankability. And if you don't know what I mean about that, when you are a movie star or TV star, there's a factor called bankability, which is that if you sign on to a production, oh, and we have just lost our connection to RBN, and let's see what's happening here. Okay, can you call me and see if we get back? I have no idea what happened. We may have lost our studio or had some kind of a crash. Anyway, I'm going to finish this story for the people on BAMuser. Bankability is where you're a big star, a known star, a name star, and merely signing onto a project will make investors believe that they can invest in that film project because automatically people will go to see the movie just because that particular star is in it. That's bankability. And it looks like Shia LaBeouf has damaged that here. Let me see if I can get back in touch with our control room. Okay, well, I have no idea what happened. Let's make sure that I'm still connected to the net. Yes, I'm still connected to the net, so the problem is at RBN's side. All right, well, I'm going to keep on doing the stories here until we can come on back. And oh, there we go. All right. And we are back here, and I don't know what the problem was. Maybe the hamster fell asleep in that wheel again that powers the control board. Okay, so let's get on back here and get things set up. Yeah, it was a weird drop there. Maybe it's the hackers. I mean, they're going after my server. Now then, over at the Bundy Ranch trial, they're not even trying to make it look like this is any kind of a fair, honest, objective court trial. It's a kangaroo court. And Judge Gloria Navarro is just making a mockery of the justice system today. But then that seems to be a growing trend, looking at some of the stuff coming out of the Ninth Circuit Courts of Appeal. And so this first Bunkerville trial is underway in Las Vegas. The prosecution was given 5 weeks to present their case, and Judge Gloria Navarro is basically shutting down the defense. She's only allowing one witness, and she's telling the witness what to testify. Now, the witness, Garrett Frenner, was a witness to the illegal slaughter of the Bundy cattle by the Bureau of Land Management, and Judge Navarro is saying you may not testify to that. The only thing you can testify is which of the defendants you saw with guns. And apparently they're scaring the witnesses. They're saying, if I think you're committing perjury, I will have you taken out of the courtroom in handcuffs. They're calling the witnesses unindicted co-conspirators. It's just in your face. Don't expect fair treatment when you go to the court system. And I'm not surprised to find more and more courts are banning people who are talking about jurors' rights or the Constitution. It is a hopelessly corrupt system. Now, a little bit of good news coming out of the snowflakes tantrums over Donald Trump. Somebody has filed a complaint with the Internal Revenue Service to revoke the 501c3 tax-exempt status of the Southern Poverty Law Center, basically saying that they were directly campaigning against President Donald Trump, and they were, and it's a violation of the 501c3 rules. And I think that would be really kind of good, because the Southern Poverty Law Center is a very left-leaning organization. They've have me on their list of websites you should never, ever, ever, ever look at, or your nose will drop off. So it's coming back to haunt them. Now, here is a bizarre story. And let's see. We're going to open the phone lines, get some calls in here. Very bizarre story. This came out of Ib Times in Great Britain. Chinese hackers linked to espionage campaign on board directors of Google, Amazon, IBM. And they're saying that this was very alarming ahead of the trade summit this week between President Donald Trump and Xi Jinping. Security experts claim a nation-state hacking group conducted espionage on a number of key industry players and lobbyists with links to the talks. Now, this operation, called Operation Trade Secret, used malware in an attempt to snoop on private sector officials. Now, the only place where they say Chinese hackers is basically in that headline. And with that recent revelation that the CIA has developed a means to frame third parties for CIA hacking attacks, it is reckless and irresponsible to claim that China is behind these attacks. For one thing, I can't imagine Chinese people coming up with a name like Operation Trade Secret. But think on back to that APEC scandal, Seattle APEC in 1997. U.S. agents were caught breaking into computers of conference attendees to steal their business secrets. So it is pointless to say it's China. Could be anybody. Could be the CIA. Could be the NSA. You cannot really know. The current state of the Internet is set up to allow deception, just like all of your machines are backdoored to allow spying. Now, I'm getting emails from people talking about the obvious attacks on the independent media. Google and YouTube are doing a demonetization war on independent media. They're trying to bankrupt all of us out here in the independent media. And maybe it's time for us to do to Google and YouTube what we did to Starbucks, which is we take our business somewhere else, because there are now alternative resources to Facebook and YouTube. There's Vimeo, Scene Life, Gab, VK, use different search engines from Google, such as Yandex and DuckDuckGo. They all work very, very well, and they're not censoring the search results. And I got another email from somebody, I think I mentioned this earlier in the show, that every time they try and post a link to one of my articles on Facebook, they'll go back in and it'll be gone. And they have been communicating with their Facebook followers saying, did you ever see this thing I posted? And they're all saying, no. So Facebook is now censoring. You got to switch to new providers. All right. Now then, let's talk a little bit about human-caused global warming. Very interesting story that came on out from Activist Post. The ruling class wants you to be afraid of climate change. They want you to be afraid of everything, because fear is how they rule and control you. And they're still pushing 2016 was the hottest year on record, blah, 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 blah. And we just had another really hard winter, lasting well into spring. Oh, we got a whole bunch of callers waiting here. I'm going to get to you real soon. And apparently, it's now come on out that NOAA's temperature data is being so severely adjusted that basically half of it is a complete fake and a fraud. NOAA never releases the raw temperature data because it doesn't support the global warming hysteria. They do a statistical correction, is what they call it, but all they're really doing is, as you go forward in time, they add more heat. By the way, Colorado got another snowstorm here. All right, let's take some phone calls. Jeff in Minnesota, aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Well, about the financial shenanigans, where they can tap into all this unlimited money and spend it on their special things, and then, lo and behold, nothing was accomplished that was for the public good, what all that money was supposed to do. And there's no accountability.
No, unfortunately, there isn't. And certainly within our country, financial people and bankers can literally get away with crimes.
I mean, this is what's called the classic bust. You know what a bust out is, right?
Yes.
You know, like in the Tony Soprano with his friend in the, you know, that lost money gambling and owned a sporting goods store, and then, you know, Tony's passing out CD-ROM players to all his friends, because, you know, but this is what's happened. All this money has been transferred and been used to do all this evil stuff that now is coming to be to the light. And it was a bust out, you know.
Well, the big problem though is in their greed and money addiction. The money junkies rigged the system so that all the wealth from ordinary people would flow into their pockets. But now there isn't enough currency out here to support our economy. And that's why you're seeing all these retailers shut down and all these loans going bad and all these defaults and all the rest of it. The system is being destroyed by the greed at the top.
Yeah, the engine's being ruined because there's no oil getting down to cool where the heat and the friction and all the movement is.
That's a good metaphor. That's a good metaphor.
And yeah, it's anyway, and like listening to your show and stuff. Like I got this Drupal message when I went to your site about 40 minutes ago. Because it wasn't, you know, I was going to it and it wouldn't load and it just
we were under hack attack, and they love to attack my server when I'm doing the radio show because they realize I'm unable to basically do anything about it. So it's basically running on the automated systems. But anytime you go to my website,
okay, thanks a lot.
All right, we're gonna let you go, and we're gonna go to Dee in Minnesota. Aloha, Dee. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hello, Mike.
Hello.
I haven't called in 1,000 years. How are you?
Doing quite well.
This whole Trump, North Korea, Syria business, it's crazy.
Yes, it is. It absolutely is.
I voted for him at the last second. I didn't think I was going to, and now I'm starting to regret my decision. But I was also here when the whole Jesse Ventura, when he got elected, and he was under a lot of pressure.
Yes.
He never caved. They kept at him and at him and at him. Finally, they went after his kids, and he just said, to hell with it, and didn't run again. And it looks like Donald Trump does not have the kind of guts that Jesse did. Jesse would not be going out half-cocked like this.
Yeah, I'm in agreement. A lot of people are very disappointed, and basically Trump just guaranteed he's going to be a one-term president. And, of course, last year my campaigning was more about keeping Hillary out than supporting Donald Trump. I would have gone for Bernie Sanders if he'd won the nomination, to be very honest about it. But
I would have rather voted for him myself.
Yeah, the only way I would support Trump in 2020 is if Hillary comes back for another run. But that's the only circumstance where I'd side with Trump.
Well, if we all haven't been blown up by then, because if he does this stuff, it's probably going to go to a World War III, and it's probably going to go nuclear.
Yeah, we may not have an election in 2020.
Once those buttons are pushed, it's done.
Yeah.
You can't turn back. Somebody's cooler heads have got to prevail. This is, and when I'd heard about the chemical weapons attack, I was looking for what should be there and isn't. And the biggest thing is, why would Assad do something that stupid?
That's where the story breaks down. He's winning the war. He was getting support from the U.S. Everything was going his way. It makes absolutely no sense at all. No sense.
And he's got an election coming up in a couple of years. He needs, in order to run a country, you need to have popular support. And if you're using chemical weapons against your own people, you're not going to get that.
No, you're not.
So he wouldn't do it. And where would he get the weapons anyway?
Yeah, he turned all of his weapons over to the United Nations to be destroyed. The only people that provably have these
confirmed it.
Yeah, the only people who actually have these weapons in Syria are the U.S.-backed rebels. And it's been documented.
Yeah, they were bragging about it.
Yeah, they were, and taking pictures of themselves.
All over the foreign press.
There have been photos of some of these chemical weapons in the rebel depots, and they're stamped with, American chemical company labels. So that's where they're getting the stuff from. But, I mean, we don't have to go through all that stuff. The story just does not make any sense at all. This gas attack, all it helps is the rebels, the U.S. Warhawks, and Israel. And that's it. It's insane to think that Assad would have done this at this particular time. Even the Fox News commenter this morning was saying it doesn't make sense that he would do this at this moment. Let's not get into the question of whether Assad has ever used chemical weapons on his people or anything, but why would he do it now? It just does not make any sense.
Doesn't make sense. And when I see all that, I wonder, what's Israel going to do now?
Well,
there's been a flood of it on the cable channels.
Well, I think Israel's going to go on in and start bombing Syria themselves and really kick this thing off going, because we've been getting a flood of Holocaust stories all over the media, and that means Israel's going to do something really, really nasty. Dee, I got to let you go.
Yeah, we've seen it on the TV too.
Yeah, we got to let you go. Got to take a break for commercials. We'll be right back.
Thanks, Mike.
And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show. We're going to take a few more phone calls here. Dee in Michigan. Aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Yeah, I wanted to keep on the gas attack in Syria.
Mm-hmm.
I was watching Fox News last night, and as they're talking about Assad gassing his citizens, along the ticker on the bottom there says that there was a Syrian airstrike in Idlib, that it was a warehouse that held chemical weapons by the rebels. So, I mean, if you put two and two together, I mean, you could see how, the Syrian Air Force strikes that warehouse and then everybody gets sick because there's chemicals in the warehouse. But yet, they want to go take the word of just some random guy who's like, oh yeah, there's planes and they dropped chemical bombs all of a sudden. It's just, it's crazy to me. Like all the news media, it almost seems like they almost bank on the fact that nobody reads the bottom ticker there. It's like,
well, I think that was probably, that was somebody's mistake here, because Syria is saying that that's what happened, that there was a secret chemical weapon depot. The rebels were getting this stuff. Apparently they were getting ready to use it, and it was hit by a weapon during the normal course of battle. Russia is at least officially going along with that explanation, but there are a lot of other people who are pointing to the long history of these false flag chemical weapon deceptions and hoaxes by the white helmets and saying, no, they did this deliberately to justify this reversal of course on Syria. One of the things that's very alarming is if you look at all the weapons that have been sent over to the border with Russia, a lot of them are still painted with the desert camo. And apparently they are now being loaded on ships to be sent down through the Bosphorus to the coast of Syria. So this is something that they were getting ready to do for quite a while. It didn't just happen by accident.
Yeah, and I agree with your previous caller and Ron Paul and everybody else is saying there's no reason why he would do this, especially like you're saying. I mean, he's basically pushing ISIS out of his country, making, huge inroads. And like you said, the U.S. is kind of softening their stance, and then all of a sudden this happens. Nobody's buying it. You can't. It makes no sense whatsoever.
No, I mean they're laughing at Nikki Haley when she's out there saying Russia just makes. Oh, we just lost our. Okay. I have no idea what's going on. It's probably the hackers. All right. Okay. Let's try and reconnect one more time here. Okay. There we are. Okay. And we are back on the air again. Boy, terrible technology, or people are messing with our communications, and certainly we have plenty of evidence for that. All right, I need to scroll back up and see where the callers are, because I believe the next one is... Hello, can you hear me? Can you hear me?
I got you. We're going to break.
Oh, we're on a break. Yes, you're right. And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show. Hour number 3. The phone lines are open, 800-313-9443. We're going to be taking a lot of phone calls this hour. And our next caller is Lenny in Los Angeles. Aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hey, Mike. How you doing?
Doing good.
Hey, I want to speak about Nikki Haley, the so-called Native American who's the representative at the UN for the U.S.
Yes.
And it just really bothers me, being part Native American myself. It really bothers me that she's there egging on the genocide of a people. Okay, she's advocating for the invasion and genocide of a people when her very people have been genocided out. Now, I just want you to imagine this mind job that's going on. After her people and her and my kind of people were genocided out, the United States then proceeded to name killing machines called the Comanche, the Black Hawk, the Apache, and I can go on.
Yes.
Okay? Now we have a so-called Native American talking about invading and genociding people out. Here's my question to anybody that's listening. What would the future American killing machines be called? The Syrians? The Palestinians? The Libyans? The Iraqis? Shit, excuse my language.
Yeah, gotta watch that.
I'm a little upset.
We're going to get our affiliates in trouble here, because even though we're starting World War III around the world, we're not allowed to use bad words on the radio to prove we're a just and moral
sorry
people.
about that.
That's okay, Lenny.
Sorry about that.
Okay, Lenny, we're going to let you go. Thanks an awful lot here. We're going to go to Alan in Chicago. Aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hey, Mike, just an observation regarding Trump and Syria, and also what the previous lady said about Jesse. He was adamant about when he got in, he was brought to the basement of the Capitol building in Minnesota to meet with the so-called people that really run the country, and he said they all asked him questions and things. So I think Trump got that same meeting. But I also think the problem we have, Mike, is, the Democrats are obstructionists. They hate them. But I think what's happening is Trump is in the White House now and the neocons and the rhinos are getting around them. And I think what we need to have again is town hall meetings, not rallies, where the people speak up. Because what I'm sensing here is this war issue, both sides hate it. And if the anti-war left could get off the hating Trump and get together with us, because this is an issue for all of us Americans, and it's terrible. And I just want to get your opinion. I think Trump is getting real bad information. He's being bullied. I don't think it's completely his ideas, but we need to help him again. What do you think about that, Mike?
Well, it's definite that Trump is being fed a lot of bovine excrement to get him to go along with this agenda, or he's been threatened or blackmailed. I don't really know. The only fact we have is that he's gone back on one of his most important campaign promises. Everybody's disappointed in him. Whatever his motive is, it has to be a good one, because Trump has to realize he's just kissed off any chance for re-election in 2020. And but as far as the American people, it appears right now that this war agenda has gone on much longer than they originally anticipated. If you go back to that General Wesley Clark leaking the plan for the dollarization of the Middle East, it was all supposed to be over in 2008 with the conquest of Iran. And here we are in 2017, still trying to get into Syria, still can't get into Iran. And I think we've reached a point where the war hawks and the corporate media understand that they've lost the trust and faith of the American people, but they're just going ahead anyway, and they don't care what we think anymore. They don't care what we're saying anymore. It's not an election year. We don't have any real power to bring about any kind of a change legally, and I'm not about to encourage illegal actions, because that'll just justify more tyranny and abuse at the hands of the authorities. So the only thing that we can do, though, is educate each other, and that right now is the most important thing that the Rivero's Rangers can be doing right now, is going on out and talking to people and just hit that one point. The story of us, first of all, remember, they tried to frame Assad for gas attacks in 2013 and 2014. It didn't work. And again, Assad is winning his war against the rebels. He was getting increased support from the U.S. to go after ISIS and Al-Qaeda. Why would he use a chemical weapon right now? It gets him absolutely nothing he wants or needs. It only helps the war hawks, Israel, and the rebels. And it just absolutely does not make sense. And you've got to get that idea to other people who are just, they're plugged into the TV and say, oh, I guess Assad gassed his own people. And you go, no, this is the 2017 version of Saddam has nuclear weapons. Just remind them of all the times the government and corporate media have lied us into these wars. Torpedoes in the Gulf of Tonkin, Spanish mine in Havana Harbor, 9/11 itself, Lusitania. I mean, there's almost too many to name. Every war is started with some kind of a fraud or a hoax. Pearl Harbor was not a surprise. Roosevelt spent all of 1941 goading Japan into that attack. And you need to remind people of all of that and say, you're being lied to again. And if the government is lying to you, go ahead. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, Mike, real quick, the biggest thing that really upsets me, and I'm not ready to throw Trump under the bus yet, but as an American citizen, I think it's time that the people, because Trump is trying to be aligned with the Russians falsely, how can he, as a president of our country, so willing and ready to throw a president duly elected by their people under the bus for another false claim? And I think the people of this country have to look, and what is it now, 300 or 400,000 people have been killed in Syria, this cockamamie war that they're doing over there?
Yeah.
I think it's time that the citizens of the world get together for peace and say, this is enough. Enough with the Middle East already. It's sickening.
Well, we need to all start screaming at the top of our lungs that we know this is a bunch of bovine excrement and we're not going along with it, if for no other reason than to send a message to the people of the other countries that the U.S. government is acting without the consent and support of the American people. And that's a very important message to get on out, because if they move forward on this war, okay, and we lose it, and I think we will, then future generations of Americans are going to be inflicted with the inherited guilt that the Germans of my generation were. oh, you were bad, you were Nazis and all the rest of it, even to people who weren't alive when it was all going on down. And they will do that to the American people in future generations, and I'd like to avoid that. And the best way for us to avoid that is for the American people, 300 million strong, to start screaming to the rest of the world, we know our government is lying, we know these are wars of conquest, and we absolutely are not supporting it or going along with it.
Thanks, Mike. I appreciate it. Love your show.
All right.
Take care.
Thank you very much. And let's see, our next phone call is Alan in Chicago. Boy, the lines are really loaded up. Alan, what's on your mind? Alan?
I think that was Alan.
Oh, I'm sorry, that was Alan. Okay, then, first of all, I'm going to do a shout-out to our on-air affiliates who are just now rejoining our network, and we're going to Gaither in Oklahoma. Aloha.
Lost Gaither.
We lost him, too. Mike in North Carolina. Mike, are you there?
Yeah. Hey, listen, I would urge people to call the White House. I did, it was a real long shot. I tried to call the president last night, and, the woman chuckled and gave me a mailing address and said if I wanted, I could call and leave a message at the comment line. And I called it, and it was closed. So it's open from like 9 in the morning or something, maybe until like in the evening. But I did call today, and I did get to actually speak with someone. And I know people are rolling their eyes saying, oh, why even bother? But, I mean, who knows? If we could call in by the tens of thousands and make the argument that you guys are making right there about what's going on with this serious situation.
Do you have the number for the comment line?
I do have it. This is a confirmed number. This is the number that I called. I've given out on other radio shows. It's area code 202-456-1111. So that's area code 202-456-1111. And I don't know if they're closed for the day yet, but, they seem very receptive to hearing what you got to say. And, of course, I brought up, Ron Paul, what he's saying. I even brought up Roger Stone into it, that Roger Stone is urging him not to go down that road. And anyway, I just told him, hey, look, I voted for him. I'm glad he became president. I got a lot of people out to the polls, personally, even family members that probably wouldn't have gone unless I practically carried them in there. And we're very leery. I said, we're holding the people that got Trump elected, we're holding our breath right now to see what he does on this. And this is a very serious situation. So anyway, I don't know. They say he can be influenced somewhat. He wants to please his people and everything. And I know he's getting a lot of pressure from the other side, so we need to put as much pressure on him as we can, because this is the only game in town.
They could very easily be telling Donald Trump that their polls are showing the American people want Assad out. So this is a chance to maybe at least correct that one illusion. So once again, everybody, area code 202-456-1111. It's the White House comment line. Apparently it's only open during daytime business hours. But call and just say, this is nonsense. Assad did not gas his own people. This is a war of conquest, and I do not support it. We got to make a lot of noise. We have to let the people of other countries around the world understand that what the U.S. government is doing right now is wrong, and we, the American people, know it's wrong, and we are not on board with any of this stuff. All right, we're going to switch over to Andrea in Oklahoma. Aloha, welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Yes, I agree with him. I've already called the White House, and it is open this is the East Coast time, so here in Oklahoma, they're an hour ahead of us. So it's from 9 a.m. East Coast to 4 o'clock in the p.m., and that makes it 8 in Oklahoma to 4 o'clock, which is 5 o'clock here. But I want to also say I've already called my Congress people, because when you said it started off your shows talking about what's going on, I immediately called my representatives. And I would urge everybody to do the same. We the people are, like you said, we are sick and tired of this. We don't want to take anymore, and we want our president to be our president and not the ultra-rich anymore. And, yes, sometimes you have to fall on your sword, or at least take the chance and try and do whatever you can for your people. I mean, if it means, hopefully it doesn't mean destruction. Hopefully he has enough security guards, and hopefully he doesn't go down to Dallas. But, you know, we would like for him to stay safe and then make all the changes that we want, and we could start from scratch again and have our country back. And I think he knows it, but, you know, whatever it takes, we've got to get a hold of him and send cards and letters. And, yeah, she said whenever I made my comment, she indicated that they collect all the comments and they deliver it to the White House at the very end of the day. And I said, does he really look them over? And she indicated that he did. But anyway, there you have it, a second person on that.
Well, I imagine they probably summarize all the comments that they get and just give them a précis on it. But still, if you've got 5,000 people every day calling that White House comment line, that's what the summary is going to say at the end of the night. And it could very well be that the people around Trump are telling him that the American people are on board with invading Syria. And that may be why he's going along with it. I mean, we have no idea what's going on, what led to this reversal by Trump. That's another possibility. That everybody's saying, oh, well, we've run our polls, and the American people think it's time for Assad to go, and he should be punished, and they believe that Assad gassed his own people. So we need to get past that propaganda wall around Donald Trump himself and just get the message to him. No, we don't buy this Assad gassed his own people story. We didn't buy it in 2013. We didn't buy it in 2014. We're not buying it now. This is another war of conquest, and we, the American people, are sick and tired of having to pay for it, and worse, having to sacrifice life and limb of our children just to make some money junkies richer than they already are.
Well, okay, outside of getting in our cars and driving to Washington, do you have any ideas outside of this? Because
yeah, flood social media. No, we just have to make as much noise every way that we can. Call in your local talk radio shows, social media, email, flood it all there. Call your congressional representatives, call your local media and say this is just nonsense. If they are hit with a tsunami of angry Americans saying this has got to stop, they're going to have to take notice. They're going to have to realize they have not succeeded in convincing us of this latest lie.
All right, well, I'm giving it my best shot. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you very much for giving it your best shot. We're going to switch over to Michael in South Carolina. Aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Michael, hello. First of all, let me thank you for the knowledge that you've given me over the years. I just want to start off with that. Second of all, I sent you an email way back. Surely you didn't get it, but let me just go real quick. He earned my vote whenever he said that he disagreed with his running mate, Mike Pence, and wouldn't do a no-fly zone because that was going to mean higher military escalation. But yeah, I revoked my support yesterday whenever he changed his mind. And like I said in the email way back, I deliver the newspaper, so every night I was getting bombarded, and I was split with why are they giving Trump this negative attention, but so much of it. They know that any attention is good attention, and that they also know that we disagree with the media. So bravo to them. They pulled the greatest bait and switch, and they got us to believe that there was somebody legitimate going in there, whenever now I know that it's a long-term chess game, and this has been, they pulled the trump card on us. And the people who mean the most to this country, who are trying to take it back, have been duped, and we bought it.
Well, and unfortunately, every election turns out to be a choice between the lesser of two evils, and I'm still convinced Hillary Clinton would have been far, far worse. But the gap between Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton does seem to be narrowing a little tiny bit. And like I said, the only way I will support Donald Trump in 2020 is if Hillary's running again. Okay, but other than that, as far as I'm concerned, Trump just made himself a one-term president.
I mean, I just can't believe that just like that, he's not even without any evidence, we're supposed to believe. And he obviously, with a quick reaction and no evidence, they think that we're going to believe this. I mean, I really do think that I think that they've done a great job, and they've gotten the very conspiracy theorists. I mean, and I hate to put that hat on, but they've gotten us to actually, well, temporarily. I think that everyone's turning the corner around now.
Mm-hmm.
But they actually, I can't believe that they did it. And I just feel like they wouldn't let this person, just by chance, who obviously has a business TV show and was very popular. My grandma said that Ronald Reagan was actually more popular of an actor in his time than Trump was. I said, this is Ronald Reagan all over again.
Well, Reagan was a real trained actor. Donald Trump just did a reality TV show based on his career in business. And but it is a very stunning development. We don't know what has led Trump to make this choice, whether he's actually bought this lie that Assad gassed his own people, whether he's being told that the American people want Assad out, that we want more war. We don't really know what's going on in that inner circle. But the only thing that we can do as the American people is exercise that First Amendment right to freedom of speech and just get up there and shout, no, whatever you think we're thinking, what we're really thinking is Assad gassing his own people is another lie. They tried it twice before. We don't buy it. It doesn't make any sense. And we do not want any more war. And we need to make as much noise in order to break through that inner circle that's trying to shield Donald Trump from what we're really thinking and seeing.
You know what I said? I deliver the newspaper, and they're really hammering. I mean, you know, the Wall Street Journal to the Charlotte Observer. You know, same pictures, same stories.
Yep.
You know, here you go. Here it is for you. Vote buy it. And I'm afraid that people are going to. And with the fake news stuff going on, it's just as confusing as time as ever, and it's just going to create chaos just like they want it to. I just can't.
Well, I'll tell you.
I respect everything. I do. I can tell that you're genuine and you're a truth teller, and that's why I'm like, you know, they know that we don't buy it, and they are presenting us with Trump, who they are bashing, because they know that we're going to retaliate against the media and go with him. I just feel like they just pulled the greatest bait and switch.
We're not doing that anymore. Anyway, got to let you go. Got to take a break for commercials, and we'll be right back. And aloha, America. Welcome back to the show. I'm getting a lot of email from people who think Trump has been threatened with assassination or the murder of his family to get him to go along with this. Everybody's got different theories and explanations. The reality is that Donald Trump appears to have drunk the Kool-Aid on this ludicrous claim that Assad gassed his own people. And again, the story doesn't make any sense. He was winning the war. He was getting more support from the U.S. to go against the terrorists. Why would he use chemical weapons? And if he was stupid enough to use chemical weapons, why not use them on the rebels? Ever think about that? Why would he use them on civilians? He would use, if he was going to use them, he'd use them on the rebels, wouldn't he? All right, let's go to Sherry in Fredericksburg. Aloha, Sherry. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Yeah, maybe I'm just naive or I'm not focusing on something. First of all, I want to say you're getting very popular, Mike, with all this hacking and everything. You know, I noticed they just hack the ones that are really good on the radio, so you're getting pretty popular. But I have a hard time believing this. I know Trump said that it's not about which party governs, it's about the people governing. It's about what we want. That's the popular view, and I think he's going to make good that. I just cannot fathom this. You know, once he sucked up to Hillary, didn't he? Someone he didn't really like, but he knows what works and what doesn't work, and I don't know what he's up to. But I don't see Trump as being reactionary. He'll do the right thing by us, I think. I'm more worried about Mother Nature and the sun and us rocking and rolling a whole bunch in the next 2 years. That's where I see the destruction. Now, call me just, a little off base, but I don't care.
Just a little teensy bit.
Trump has been threatened before. I always thought that, because that's the MO. That's the method of operation of the bad guys. And yes, they will stop him, I think. I'll get out on a limb to say that I think he'll be hurt. It may be sometime in the next 2 years, but I think he'll survive. And I don't see him leaving in 2 years. So, and I think I'm going to be okay here. And I just can't, maybe I'm, like I say, denying something. The globalists have tried so hard to drive a wedge between Trump and Putin. And I think because they knew there was a connection there that has to do with two guys that want the right thing for their people. And they've misrepresented Putin, and they've discredited Trump, but because I think they know a positive connection still exists, and both want to avoid war. And it's just a matter of, I don't know how Putin and Trump can get together and talk about this, but they'll find a way. And also a question, technical problems. Isn't it easier just to press a button than to have boots on the ground?
No, that was the lesson of Vietnam, where they thought they could win that war from the air, and it didn't work out. Even with all the whiz-bang modern weapons that you can possibly find out there, the reality is you have to have forces on the ground to control the territory. Go on. Okay. Anyway, we're coming up here on a commercial break, and we got a lot of people waiting on the phone line. So
computers. I'm specifically referring to computers, but I'll let it go, and if you have more to say, I'll take it off the air.
All right. Well, thanks an awful lot, Sherry. We're going to let you go. We're going to start with Charlie in Los Angeles. And, Charlie, I'm probably going to have to take you through this next commercial break. So what's on your mind?
Well, I want to tell everybody to call in. That's what you need to do. But I think we might be being played for fools here. I don't think there's a general in the military that's going to take an order from Trump to go to war against any of these characters, whether it's Russia, whether it's North Korea, Syria. Remember, Syria's Air Force handed Israel their heads in both wars, okay? This is no duck walk. So we don't have an army, I don't think, that can take casualties. And this is what this is all about. You're going to have a lot of casualties if you want to get what they want done, and that's to wipe out Hezbollah. And I don't think the generals are going to get on board with this. Just see what happens. You need to understand people get to be generals by being very much in favor of war, because war means more money, more promotions, and I would love for the world to be the way that you're describing it, but unfortunately we must agree to disagree. Have to let you go for a commercial break. We'll be right back. Aloha, America. Welcome back to our show here, and my web server is being absolutely pounded on. So there are definitely people out there who are afraid of the fact that the American people are not believing this story. In fact, Syria hoax is apparently trending very highly on Twitter right now. People are just not buying into this nonsense here. All right, let's grab some more phone calls here and then get back to the news. Did we do Charlie in Los Angeles? No, we did. Martin in California. Let's go to Martin in California. Aloha, Martin. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hi, Mike. I was listening to Michael Savage this morning, and he comes on here in the Bay Area an hour before you do. And I was pleasantly surprised to hear him say that this was a hoax, that this makes absolutely no logical sense, that Assad would not bomb his own people. And then, even more surprising was he said cui bono, and he said Israel very emphatically. So, I've always known him as a Zionist, but maybe he's seeing the light. In any case, he has a wide audience, and I hope that, he will influence a lot of people.
Well, what's interesting is we're getting we got a really bad phone connection here. There was a story that just came on out where apparently over at CNN they were interviewing a congressman about why we've got to go into Assad, and this congressman came out and said, "I'm not buying that Assad gassed his own people." So they're having a real hard time selling this to anybody.
Yeah, have you heard of any of the other? Have you heard of what any of the other Fox hosts or Rush Limbaugh or have taken a position on this?
Well, I don't have a lot of chance to share this to listen to other hosts, unfortunately. But like I said, I caught this one commenter on Fox this morning saying it doesn't make any sense. And so I think that's going to be the general reaction. People are just not buying into this thing one tiny bit. And there's no reason to. The story just does not make any sense. And we just have to stand up and scream at the government and the corporate media, you guys are full of crap, and we are not listening to you anymore.
Well, I hope that Trump is just playing some kind of a ploy here.
A lot of people are saying he may be doing that he's setting up the media and the war machine for an epic fail. I don't know. Time will solve that particular mystery. But the most important thing we can do right now is to make it very clear to anybody looking at the American people, either from inside this country or from outside, that we are not believing this big pile of bovine excrement, and we are not on board with yet another war of regime change. Because let's look at the reality. The U.S. has been trying to get rid of Assad for going on 6 years, and they have tried this nonsense about Assad gassing his own people twice before, in 2013 and 2014. And both times it was revealed as a hoax, and there's no reason to think this one isn't a hoax. All the more so because it just doesn't make sense that Assad would use banned chemical weapons knowing it would prompt a U.S. invasion. And if he was going to be stupid enough to use chemical weapons, why use them on civilians? Why not use them on the rebels? The story just doesn't make any sense.
Of course, yeah. And the UN official that was featured on RT this morning, who was one of not representing a country but representing a UN special committee or something, was saying that this is undetermined where these came from, where these chemicals came from.
Well, that's a positive sign. That's a positive sign. But, apparently the people who want these wars are exerting all the influence and pressure they can, not just on the U.S. government, not just on Donald Trump, but on the UN itself, on Great Britain, to get them to go along with this. And it reminds me of what George Washington warned us all in his farewell address, to beware of foreign entanglements, and what Eisenhower warned us of in his farewell address, the power and unrestrained greed of the military-industrial complex.
Yeah, well, take heart, there's a lot of people that are anti-war in this country, and a lot of people voted for Trump that are anti-war, and there's plenty of old-fashioned liberals that are anti-war. So we will form a force here, and we will not let this happen.
Well, we just have to be as noisy as we can. And what's amazing, Bill Kristol is now out there saying that the Never Trump group will now support Donald Trump if he goes ahead and overthrows Assad. I mean, it doesn't get more obvious than that.
Yeah, no kidding. No kidding. Well, keep up the good fight there.
I will do just as long as I can. We're going to take another phone call from Mike in Fort Lauderdale. Mike, what is on your mind?
Hello, sir. Yeah, this is a significant situation. I'm thinking that we need to not instill all of our energy in hoping Trump is going to be the right guy. If he one of two things, either A, he's compromised, or B, we're fooled. Either way, we're in a defensive mode where we're losing ground. I suggest we do the Gutenberg thing and go all out with flyers listing all the problems.
Yes.
With our soldiers being hurt, all the fake things that are going on, General Wesley Clark's speech showing that the rebels are Al-Qaeda, reflecting on that, talking about these things that have been going on. It's very clear to me that Steve Bannon is a champion and on our side because he's already being pushed out. So obviously he had a moral and ethical problem with this. I think that we need to push as army ants, just millions of us, just putting out the propaganda nonstop, putting out the truth to fight this poison. And so that, if we can take the military out of the equation, these guys have nothing. If we can win the hearts and minds, if we can get the word out to the regular guy.
Well, we can do it.
George Washington, Thomas Jefferson thing to do is to be aware that we are being occupied. Our government is completely occupied. And what would, maybe a catchphrase, things like, what would George Washington do? Things of that, just get it out there. Look at all these veterans. They're not even getting benefits. They're being, we are doing the geopolitics of a country with two rivers and a star. It's not even our country. It's like the 51st state. And I understand they're very powerful, but you know what? They're not us, and they don't outnumber us. And I know their motto. Their motto is, by way of deception, we do war. Well, that's what they're doing. And Saudi Arabia is just as bad. And then you get into the Sunni sect of Saudi Arabia versus Iran, who's invaded no one, who they are Shiite and they're diametrically opposed. And then we get back to General Wesley Clark about that path of destruction going right up. You know, they're trying to make us Winston Churchill and rewrite the borders so they can have their greater empire at our expense with our people. If we just keep hammering it out and showing, hey, listen, this isn't your war, this is wrong, I think that we can win the hearts and minds of the average Joe, who are the people who are going to make the difference. No one will realize.
You are correct, and you are correct because the former citizens of the Soviet Union proved it could be done. And they didn't have the advantage of an internet and computers and other electronic devices. They brought down the corrupt Soviet government with nothing more than fax machines. All it took was the willingness and the will for ordinary people to step up and say, this is what's going wrong with our country. And passing from person to person until the entire population was awake and understood the degree to which they were being lied to and corrupted, and the Soviet Union collapsed. And I still think that our government is well and truly on that same path. In fact, this could even accelerate it because you've got the war hawks and the media are pushing this Assad story, and nobody is believing it. I know we ran a poll on whatreallyhappened.com yesterday. Do you believe Assad gassed his own people? And I think we had like maybe 5 people who voted yes, who I assume are monitoring this site for various intelligence agencies and politicians. And the rest was overwhelmingly no. I have not met a single person in real life who is buying this story. They all think it's just absolute garbage.
We have to mock them. We have to make fun of them and mock them and show them for what they are. And so even if they, by way of deception, they do war, that's fine. They've occupied our government. They have everybody blackmailed. Let's make them irrelevant.
Okay, well, you're focusing on just one aspect because, as I keep saying before, wars and assassinations never happen for one reason coming from one source. What you have is a group of entities, individuals, politicians, whatever, who have their own particular agenda, but the agendas are all served by the same outcome, which is the war or the assassination, and that's when they happen. Yes, Israel has their agenda in pushing for the wars. The Federal Reserve has their agenda pushing for the wars. The military-industrial complex has their agenda pushing for the wars. The oil companies have their agenda, so forth and so on. And we need to basically just get the word out there that we know we're being lied to. We do not support this rush to war. And that's the message. Just keep it simple.
Yes, sir.
Keep it simple.
I think in closing, sir, just really quickly in closing, can we make a line item list of all the things that we know? Something so somebody can very Reader's Digest version read it. Hey, this is what happened. We exposed this. We did this. General Wesley Clark did this. Make it like a list and then just get it out there by email or print or whatever and just make it like, hey, did you know?
I'm sure there's a lot of material out there like that, but I'll take a look at putting one together myself, make it as a PDF that people can print up and fax, because obviously the independent media and the Internet are under attack right now. They may just come on out and find some way to just shut it all down, and then we do what the Soviet citizens did. We start using fax machines. Because ultimately...
You are the best. You are a superhero.
Thank you very much.
You are a superhero.
Thank you.
I love you, buddy.
Thank you very much for the phone call, for the kind words. I do appreciate that. People naturally want to know the truth. They want to think they know the truth. And they're beginning to realize that just sitting in a chair in front of the TV set is not, in fact, giving them the truth. The purpose of the corporate media is to sell you things. The next vaccine, the next deodorant, this year's cars, the next policy, the next candidate, the next war. That's what their job is. That's why they're paid all the money they are paid. They're not paid those $1 million salaries to tell you reality. They're paid those $1 million salaries because they're very convincing liars. And you need to remember that. All right, let's see. Going back to the phones, I think this is obviously a call-in hour here. Nick in Southern California, aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind? Nick, are you there?
Aloha, Mike.
Aloha. We got a bad phone connection. What's on your mind?
Sorry about that, Mike. So I was calling in with some financial information. J.P. Morgan evidently is stockpiling silver. Bix Weir reported that they have, let me get the numbers here. It's more silver than was stockpiled by the Hunt brothers in the 70s. The Hunt brothers had stockpiled, I want to say it was 100 million ounces in silver, and they've got it by maybe 10 times that. The Hunt brothers were shut down over that for their manipulation.
Yes.
And J.P. Morgan has been they've been selling, the paper contracts to keep the price down and buying physical. To have that amount of stockpile under one house is a clear indicator that we're headed for a major runaway as soon as that kind of information gets out.
Well, they've been doing the same thing to gold as well, blending the paper contracts with the physical. And I think there's something like over $1 trillion worth of paper gold contracts out there for which there is no corresponding physical gold to deliver. And they're trying to keep the price of gold down to keep people from leaving their savings accounts and stock portfolios, and to make it easier for places like the Federal Reserve to basically replace the gold that was being held in their vaults. We talked about this on the History Channel on America's Book of Secrets, and I think that video from the gold conspiracy is still out there. You can hunt it on down and take a look at that, because everything that we talked about in that show, and this is what, 2.5, 3 years ago now, has now been confirmed as having been real. Nick, thanks a lot. We're going to let you go, and we're going to take one more phone call here from Nancy in New Jersey. Nancy, aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Aloha. Disseminating information. I would love to see you produce a PDF. I do it myself. Great places are waiting rooms, doctor's offices, when your automobile is being serviced. And people really, they listened. I was in the doctor's office today, and the television was on. They were talking about Syria, and there was about 20 people in there, and I just started saying, this is the third time. Who's going to believe this stuff? They're going to send us to war. And people were very, very receptive.
Yeah, they are. They know. Ever since Saddam's nukes, the American people are willing to accept the fact that they are lied to by the government and the corporate media. And yeah, that's all it takes. Just speaking out. And you will generally find that people are receptive. There are a few still in denial. But the most important thing that you can do is to speak out, because you will find very often that you're in a room of people and they all know what's going on, but they're all staying silent because they think everybody else in the room is following along with the official story, and they don't want to appear to be kooky, tinfoil hat wearing conspiracy theorists. And then the instant you speak out, the reaction you're generally going to get is, you too? I thought I was the only one who was seeing these problems. And then everybody will chime on in.
Yeah, it's amazing how receptive they are, because people are silent. They sit there and they're looking at their magazines or the television, and as soon as you start talking, they're diverted away from those distractions, and they are interested.
Well, they ought to be, because we're looking at a serious possibility of mushroom clouds in this country.
Yes, and I try and take your advice not to go too hard and strong and fast. I'd like to scream, but I hold myself back.
Yeah, screaming is not a good way to approach somebody. And yes, you do have to go very gently and not trigger off their defense mechanisms. And the fine art of being a rabble-rouser is just knowing what the rabble is ready to listen to and what they are not ready to listen to. And you have to develop, it's an acquired skill.
Yeah, it's something to hand out till you leave them in those places, because people are sitting there and you just grab them. I used to hand out stuff on Mount Paul, CDs, flyers. I would just leave them. We actually used to drive around as a group and just leave, every doctor's office, every automobile, service center. We would just leave this stuff.
I should do that with the DVDs for All Wars or Bankers Wars. I got a huge box of them I was going to give away, and I've given them away to everybody I know, and I still got ones left over. So yeah, leave them in just leave them in places.
You put the word free on something like that, and people grab it.
Yes, they do. Free, new, and improved. All right, Nancy, got to let you go. We got to take our last commercial break of the day. Going to take one more phone call when we come on back, and then wrap up our show. Aloha, America. Welcome back to the show. We're going to take one more phone call from Ray in San Jose. That's a euphonious name. What's on your mind today?
Good afternoon, Mike. I was just wondering,
I feel that they're setting Trump up in Syria, and that we all know that it's not happening like that. That this, the gas is not from Assad. That the lie, they're setting them up.
They're setting us up. They're trying to set us up. And maybe Trump is genuinely believing this. If he is, he's an idiot. I'm sorry, but he is. If he actually believes that Assad gassed his own people, because anybody can think about that and realize what an absolute nonsensical claim that is. He's winning the war. He's almost got his country back. He was starting to get more support from the Trump administration, and then he goes out and he does something that's going to cause this kind of a backlash. And again, if he was actually going to use chemical weapons, why not use them on the rebels?
Exactly. But they're already talking about today on the NPR, they're talking about how much money is being spent on protecting Trump. Everything they talk about, everything, even on our national radio program, they put down Trump with every story. I understand Trump would be an idiot to believe this, but they're out to get him. He has no hope. I believe he's a sincere family man, and they're tearing him apart.
All right, well, listen, we're going to let you go here because I'm almost at the top of the show here, and I need to basically finish up the show here. And I want to do that by putting out a call to Rivero's Rangers, because right now we have to get the word out. Everybody, every one of you, needs to make as much noise as you can about this and just send an unequivocal message that we are not believing this latest lie, and just keep the story simple. Just remind everybody that the U.S. government claimed Assad was gassing his own people in 2013. That was exposed as a fraud. Repeated it in 2014. That was exposed as a fraud. And just say, stop and think about the story, and it doesn't make any sense. Assad was winning the war, almost had won the war against the rebels. He was feeling secure and safe for the first time in 6 years. He doesn't have a reason to use chemical weapons. And if he was going to use chemical weapons, why use them on civilians? Why not use them on the rebels? The story just does not make any sense, and every single one of you listening to this broadcast needs to make a point of sharing that with everyone that you know. Flood social media with it. Just keep it simple and just say, it doesn't make any sense. Nobody can come up with a reason why Assad would do this. And Ron Paul is saying it's obviously a false flag. Nobody's buying it. Even the people at Fox News and members of Congress are saying this is just complete nonsense. And we have to get the word out so that the rest of the world understands we, the American people, are not believing this lie. We're not supporting this war. And if Trump is, in fact, being lied to about American support for a war in Syria, we need to shout that down. So don't forget that comment line, 202-456-1111. There's the music. Got to get out of here and get something useful done with the rest of the day. We'll be back tomorrow, Friday, with the lovely Lady Claire here on the Republic Broadcasting Network. Until then, aloha, America.